I'm Fiona Harper, 28 years old, standing frozen in the glittering ballroom of the Rosewood Hotel in Boston, my heart pounding so hard it feels like it might shatter the delicate champagne flute in my hand. The chandeliers above cast a dazzling glow over the sea of Boston's elite, old money families, politicians, and CEOs in their finest attire. But all eyes are on me, and not for the reason I'd hoped. My stepmother, Eleanor Wright, stands at the center of the room, her perfectly painted lips curled into a cruel smile as she announces to the crowd, "She's just a waitress!" Her voice, sharp and mocking, slices through the murmurs of the gala, and a ripple of laughter follows. The security guard, his face a mix of professionalism and discomfort, approaches to escort me out. Every step he takes feels like a countdown to my humiliation. But what Eleanor, her daughter Sophia Wright, and this room full of judgmental strangers don't know is that my husband, Nathan Brooks, the billionaire tech mogul secretly funding this entire charity gala, is moments away from walking through those ornate double doors. The years of being treated like an outsider in my own family are about to come crashing down in a way no one could have predicted. It's hard to stand here, dressed in my elegant navy gown, feeling the weight of their stares without my mind spiraling back to the beginning. I was 8 when my world first broke. My parents, Thomas and Elizabeth Harper, were my everything. Dad built a thriving investment firm from nothing, and Mom was his anchor, charming Boston's high society while keeping me grounded. But cancer stole her from us too soon, and Dad buried his grief in work, leaving me with nannies who couldn't fill the void. 2 years later, Eleanor swept into our lives at a charity event, all sophistication and warm smiles. As a lonely 10-year-old, I thought she'd be the mother I craved. She brought her daughter, Sophia, my age, and I dreamed of having a sister. But that dream crumbled fast. Eleanor's favoritism was subtle at first. Sophia got the bigger bedroom, the extravagant Christmas gifts, the loud praise for every small achievement. My victories, a painting in an art show, a good grade, earned a curt nice job at best. Fiona, used the guest bathroom. Sophia needs privacy, Eleanor would say, relegating me to second-class status in my own home. Once, she threw Sophia a lavish birthday party, inviting her entire school, but forgot to include my friends for mine. I overheard her whisper to Sophia, "Don't worry, Fiona will get used to being on the sidelines." Those words burned into me, a wound that never quite healed. And now, here I am, years later, facing her cruelty again, but this time I'm not the scared little girl she once dismissed. Where in the world are you listening from? Drop your country in the comments, we'd love to know. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend you do it right now so you don't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just stories, they're deep life lessons, the kind you'll probably recognize from your own experiences. So stay with us, there's so much more to come. Pain of my childhood still lingers like a shadow, even now, as I stand in the Rosewood ballroom facing Eleanor's cruel smirk. I grew up in a cozy colonial house in Boston's leafy suburbs where my parents, Thomas and Elizabeth Harper, built a life that felt like a dream. Dad's investment firm was his pride, a testament to his grit, while Mom was the heart of our family, hosting charity luncheons with grace and teaching me to stay humble despite our wealth. But when I was 8, that dream shattered. Mom's breast cancer diagnosis came like a thief, stealing her within 6 months. I still remember her frail hands squeezing mine, whispering, "Be brave, Fiona." Dad was never the same after. He buried himself in work, leaving me with nannies who offered care but no warmth. The house, once filled with laughter, turned cold, and I learned what it meant to feel alone while surrounded by people. 2 years later, Eleanor Wright glided into our lives at a charity auction, all elegance and calculated charm. To a 10-year-old desperate for a mother's love, she seemed like a savior. Her daughter, Sophia, my age, came with her, and I naively hoped we'd be sisters. But the moment they moved into our home, the cracks appeared. Eleanor's favoritism was subtle but deliberate. Sophia got the sunny bedroom with the bay window. I was shuffled to a smaller one down the hall. Christmas, Sophia unwrapped designer clothes and jewelry while I got a single sketch pad. The worst was my 11th birthday. Eleanor threw Sophia a lavish party, inviting her entire school with a live band and a cake towering 3 feet high. My birthday? She forgot to invite my friends, leaving me to blow out candles alone in the kitchen. I overheard her whisper to Sophia, "Don't worry, Fiona will get used to being on the sidelines." Those words carved themselves into my heart, a wound that bled for years. "Fiona, use the guest bathroom. Sophia needs her space," Eleanor would say, even though we were supposed to share the ensuite. My needs were always deferred. "Sophia needs new riding boots for her lessons, so your art supplies will have to wait." Eleanor orchestrated family outings when she knew I had school commitments, then painted me as the difficult child who didn't want to join. I overheard her fake tears one night, telling Dad, "Thomas, I've tried so hard, but Fiona just shuts me out." Exhausted, Dad would nod, too broken to see through her act. I felt him slipping away, his love buried under Eleanor's manipulations. When I was 15, I caught a glimpse of the father I'd lost. I overheard him arguing with Eleanor in his study. "Fiona's my daughter, Eleanor," he said, his voice firm. "I won't let her feel abandoned." But Eleanor's reply was ice cold. "She wants to be independent, Thomas. She doesn't need you." After that, he grew even more distant, his business trips longer, his presence at home a ghost. I threw myself into school and part-time jobs, working at a local bookstore to save for college, refusing to beg for scraps from Eleanor's control over Dad's wealth. Then, during my freshman year of college, Dad had a heart attack at his office. I didn't even get to say goodbye. The funeral was a blur of crocodile tears from Eleanor, playing the grieving widow while I sat numb. The will reading, the final blow landed. Dad left the bulk of his estate to Eleanor, with Sophia inheriting trust funds and properties. I got just enough for college tuition and a pittance for living expenses. "Your father wanted you to learn the value of hard work," Eleanor said, her sympathy as fake as her tears. Sophia smirked from my childhood bedroom doorway as I packed. "No need to come back for holiday dinners. We're starting new traditions." Cast out, I clung to the Harper name, the last tether to the family I'd once had. After the wreckage of my childhood, I rebuilt myself piece by piece, determined to carve out a life free from the shadows of Eleanor and Sophia Wright. I graduated from college with honors, my art history degree a quiet rebellion against the family that had dismissed my passions. I found my place at Westfield Gallery, a small but vibrant art space in Boston's Back Bay, where I spent my days championing emerging artists. The work wasn't glamorous, long hours cataloging pieces, negotiating with temperamental collectors, but it was mine. I loved discovering raw talent, helping artists translate their pain and dreams onto canvas. My tiny studio apartment in Cambridge, with its creaky floors and single window overlooking a maple-lined street, became my sanctuary. It was modest, but every inch of it was earned, a far cry from the gilded cage of my father's mansion. I kept my past locked away, sharing it with no one, not even the close-knit circle of friends I'd found, artists, baristas, dreamers who knew me as Fiona Harper, not the discarded daughter of Thomas Harper. One rainy April afternoon, the gallery was quiet, the soft patter of rain against the windows my only company as I unpacked a shipment of abstract sculptures. The bell above the door chimed, and in walked Nathan Brooks. I didn't recognize him at first, just a tall man in a slightly damp button-down and jeans, his hazel eyes fixed on a series of paintings with an intensity that caught my attention. "Can I help you find something specific?" I asked, my standard greeting. He turned, offering a smile that was warm, unpretentious, and reached his eyes. "Just browsing, but I'm curious about these," he said, gesturing to the vibrant canvases. I launched into an explanation about the artist, a young woman exploring urban isolation through bold colors and stark negative spaces. We talked for an hour, moving from painting to painting, his questions thoughtful, his curiosity genuine. Unlike the usual wealthy collectors who treated me like a means to an end, he listened, really listened. As he left, he handed me his business card, Nathan Brooks, CEO, Brooks Innovations. My jaw nearly dropped. the tech mogul whose company was reshaping artificial intelligence? Here, in my little gallery? We met for coffee a few days later at a cozy cafe in Harvard Square. What was meant to be a quick chat stretched into dinner, the cafe staff politely nudging us out at closing time. Nathan was refreshingly grounded for someone whose name graced Forbes lists. He spoke of his middle-class roots in Seattle, his parents, both high school teachers, who sent him care packages of homemade granola when he was a broke startup founder living on instant noodles. I found myself opening up, sharing my love for art, my dream of opening a gallery focused on therapeutic programs for kids. I skirted around my family, keeping the conversation firmly in the present. His sincerity disarmed me, and soon our coffee dates turned into walks along the Charles River, late-night dinners at hole-in-the-wall restaurants, and visits to obscure museum exhibits. "Money complicates things," he told me once, explaining why he lived in a modest townhouse instead of a sprawling estate. "I've seen what it does to people who start believing they're above everyone else." I don't want to be that guy. 3 months in, on a quiet evening on his rooftop terrace, the city skyline twinkling below, Nathan gently broached the subject I'd avoided. "You never talk about your family," he said, his voice soft but probing. "I've told you about my parents' terrible dad jokes and my sister's eco-warrior crusades, but I know nothing about yours." I stared into my wine glass, the weight of my past pressing against my chest. His silence was patient, creating a space I hadn't realized I needed. That night, I poured out everything, the way Eleanor manipulated my father, how Sophia reveled in my exclusion, the slow erosion of my place in my own family. I told him about the birthday party where I sat alone while Sophia's bash filled the house with music, about overhearing Eleanor tell my dad I was difficult to justify her neglect. The worst was the memory of my father's voice, pleading with Eleanor to treat me fairly, only for her to dismiss me as independent to drive a wedge between us. "The hardest part," I admitted, tears breaking through, "is knowing Dad died thinking I didn't need him, that I wasn't worth fighting for." Nathan didn't interrupt or offer empty platitudes. He took my hand, his grip steady, and said, "They failed you, Fiona, not the other way around." Those words cracked something open inside me, a wound I'd carried for years, the fear that I'd been unlovable, that I'd deserved to be cast aside. His quiet strength started a healing I didn't know I needed. Our relationship deepened, a slow and steady bloom. Nathan never pushed me to confront Eleanor or Sophia, respecting the walls I'd built to protect myself. Instead, he brought me into his world, his warm parents who welcomed me like a daughter, and his sister Lily who became the sibling I'd always wanted. Through a year, he proposed on a windswept beach in Cape Cod, the sunset painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. It wasn't a grand gesture, just us, hand in hand, as he said, "Fiona, you've changed how I see the world. I want to face everything with you by my side." We married 2 months later in a small ceremony at his parents' Seattle home, surrounded by 30 close friends and his family. I didn't invite Eleanor or Sophia, not out of shame, but to shield the life I was building. My happiness was too precious to let their toxicity touch it. For 2 years, Nathan and I lived in a bubble of joy in our Brooklyn brownstone. I kept working at the gallery, insisting on my independence despite his wealth. He understood that my career was about purpose, not money. We traveled, planned for a future with children, and left the Wrights firmly in my past. Until that cream-colored envelope arrived, pulling me back into the world I thought I'd escaped. 2 years into our marriage, life with Nathan felt like a warm, steady anchor, grounding me in a happiness I'd never thought possible. We'd settled into our Brooklyn brownstone, my days filled with the quiet thrill of curating exhibits at Westfield Gallery, his with the relentless pace of running Brooks Innovations. Past, Eleanor, Sophia, the family that discarded me, had faded into a distant ache, one I rarely revisited. Then, on a crisp Tuesday morning, a cream-colored envelope arrived in our mailbox, its embossed gold lettering gleaming with false promise. It was an invitation to the annual Thomas Harper Foundation Gala, a charity event for Boston Children's Hospital, chaired by none other than Eleanor Wright. Tucked inside was a handwritten note in her elegant script. "Fiona, it's been far too long. The family misses you. Eleanor." My stomach twisted. 6 years had passed since my father's death. 6 years of silence from her, no calls, no cards, no hint of care. The note reeked of insincerity, a calculated move masquerading as reconciliation. I showed Nathan that evening, still clutching the envelope as we sat at our kitchen island. "What's this?" he asked, his brow furrowing as he read the invitation. Then his expression shifted, a flicker of unease crossing his face. "The Boston Children's Hospital Gala? That's one of the events the Brooks Foundation is sponsoring this year. We're the primary donor, actually." I stared at him, the pieces clicking into place. "You're funding Eleanor's gala?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking as blindsided as I felt. "I didn't know it was her event. The foundation staff handles smaller partnerships, and I only review the big picture. I had no idea she was chairing it. Coincidence felt too sharp to be chance." "She must know about us," I said, my voice tight. "My married name is Brooks now, and we've been in the society pages a few times. Someone must have told her." Nathan's eyes met mine, steady and resolute. "So, what do you want to do?" I pushed the invitation away, tempted to shred it. "I'm not going. Why would I walk into a room full of people who made it clear I was never good enough?" He leaned closer, his voice gentle but firm. "Because you are good enough, Fiona. More than that. Maybe facing them on your terms, not theirs, could help you close this chapter for good." His words stirred something in me, a spark of defiance, a chance to stand tall where I'd once been made small. "There's another thing," he added. "The Brooks Foundation's sponsorship is anonymous. Eleanor has no idea I'm the donor." A slow smile crept onto my face. "So, she doesn't know her stepdaughter is married to the man bankrolling her precious gala?" Nathan's grin mirrored mine. "Not a clue. We spent the evening plotting. I'd arrive first, alone, letting Eleanor and Sophia think they had the upper hand. Nathan would join later, his entrance timed for maximum impact. The night before the gala, nerves gnawed at me. Lying in bed, I whispered, "What if this is a mistake? What if they humiliate me again?" Nathan turned to me, his eyes fierce with conviction. "You're Fiona Brooks, my wife, a brilliant woman who built herself up from nothing. If it gets too much, text me. I'll be there in a heartbeat." His words steadied me, and for the first time I felt ready to face the past, not as a victim, but as a woman who knew her worth. The Rosewood Hotel's ballroom glittered like a jewel, its crystal chandeliers casting a golden glow over Boston's elite. I stepped inside, my navy gown brushing the marble floor, and introduced myself at the check-in table. "Fiona Brooks." The young woman smiled, confirming my name on her tablet, oblivious to the storm brewing within me. The room buzzed with wealth and power, senators, philanthropists, and socialites sipping champagne. I felt their glances, some curious, others dismissive, but I held my head high. Then I spotted Patricia, my father's cousin, near the silent auction. "Fiona," she said, squinting. "What are you doing here?" Her tone wasn't hostile, just surprised, as if I'd wandered into a world where I didn't belong. "Eleanor invited me," I replied smoothly, masking the churn in my stomach. She nodded, already distracted by more important guests. Before I could move on, Eleanor and Sophia zeroed in on me, their smiles sharp as knives. Sophia's eyes raked over my dress. "What, did you pull that from a clearance rack?" she sneered, her red designer gown screaming money. Eleanor chimed in, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Still at that little art shop, Fiona?" Such persistence. I bit back a retort, refusing to let them bait me so soon. But Eleanor wasn't done. She glided to the stage, signaling the band to stop mid-song. The room fell silent as she took the microphone. "A heartfelt thank you to our staff tonight," she began, her gaze locking onto me. though it seems one of our waitresses forgot her uniform." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Fiona, dear, have you mistaken your role tonight?" Laughter rippled through the crowd, a mix of amusement and discomfort. Sophia, phone in hand, started recording, her smirk gleeful. The security guard, Michael, approached, his expression apologetic but firm. "Ma'am, I need to ask you to come with me," he said quietly. My hands trembled as I clutched my champagne flute, the humiliation burning my cheeks. "I was invited," I insisted, fumbling for the invitation in my clutch. "Here, look." But Eleanor descended from the stage, her voice cutting through. "That's just a courtesy copy, Fiona. We send them to extended family for awareness, not as actual invitations." Sophia laughed outright. She really thought she belonged here. My cousin Brandon, ever eager to pile on, called out, "Classic Fiona, like when she tried sneaking into the foundation's family photo. Pathetic." The room spun, their voices a cacophony of mockery. A memory surged, my father arguing with Eleanor when I was 15, his voice fierce. "Fiona's my daughter. I won't let her feel abandoned." Pain of losing him fueled me. I straightened, my voice rising. "Don't you dare mention my father, Eleanor. You stole him from me. You even forged his signature to funnel his assets to Sophia." Crowd gasped, a stunned silence falling. Eleanor's face drained of color, her eyes darting nervously, betraying her guilt. "That's absurd," she stammered, but her voice wavered. Sophia's phone faltered, her bravado cracking. I stood my ground, the truth a weapon, knowing Nathan's arrival would turn this moment into something they'd never forget. As Michael, the security guard, gently but firmly guided me toward the ballroom's exit, my dignity hung by a thread. The crowd's whispers and Sophia's gleeful filming burned like salt in a wound. I glanced at my watch. Nathan was due any moment, but part of me dreaded him seeing me like this, broken down by the family that had already taken so much. Just as I reached for my phone to text him to meet me outside, the heavy double doors of the Rosewood ballroom swung open with a commanding thud. Nathan Brooks stood framed in the entrance, his tailored tuxedo accentuating his broad shoulders, his presence radiating authority. Flanking him were a U.S. Senator and the hospital's executive director, their arrival drawing every eye in the room. The air shifted, the crowd's murmurs fading into a stunned hush. Nathan's gaze swept the room, landing on me, flanked by security, surrounded by Eleanor, Sophia, and a gaggle of onlookers with their phones raised. Without hesitation, he strode to the stage, his steps deliberate, and plucked the microphone from Eleanor's manicured hand with a polite but unyielding gesture. "There's been a mistake here," he said, his voice clear and resonant, cutting through the tension like a blade. "No one gets to insult my wife, Fiona Brooks, at an event I'm funding." The room froze. Sophia's mouth fell open, her phone slipping from her fingers and clattering to the floor. Eleanor's composure cracked, her eyes darting between Nathan and me. "Your wife," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan's expression was ice cold. "Yes. For 2 years, Fiona has been my wife. The tragedy is that she felt forced to hide her connection to the Wright family because of your cruelty." He turned to the crowd, his presence commanding their full attention. "The Brooks Foundation is the anonymous benefactor behind this gala. I never imagined the organizer would use it as a stage to humiliate my wife." Gasps rippled through the audience, the revelation landing like a thunderbolt. Eleanor's face drained of color, her carefully curated facade crumbling. Sophia, unable to contain herself, shoved forward, her voice shrill. "She doesn't deserve this. Fiona's a nobody who got lucky marrying you." Crowd recoiled at her outburst. Eleanor grabbed her arm, hissing, "Sophia, stop!" But Nathan's response was swift and devastating. "The only failure here, Sophia, is how you've treated your sister. Fiona's value isn't tied to luck or my name. She built it herself, something you might not understand." His words silenced her, her bravado evaporating. Nathan faced Eleanor, his tone steely. I'm considering withdrawing all Brooks Foundation support from any initiative tied to your name. The threat hung heavy, its implications clear. Eleanor's social standing relied on such partnerships. I stepped forward, my voice steady despite the chaos. That's not necessary, Nathan. The hospital shouldn't suffer for their actions. But this foundation bears my father's name, and it deserves better leadership. I met Eleanor's gaze, unflinching. It's time for a change. Crowd murmured, some nodding, as hospital board members exchanged glances, clearly unwilling to risk losing Nathan's support. In that moment, I felt the weight of my past lift, replaced by a strength I hadn't known I possessed. The gala's aftermath was a storm I hadn't anticipated. A week later, the Boston Globe published an exposé penned by a journalist who'd been at the event, a friend of my mother's from years past. It laid bare Eleanor's manipulations, including her forged signatures to divert my father's assets to Sophia. The scandal erupted, forcing Eleanor to resign from the Thomas Harper Foundation board, her social empire crumbling under the weight of her own deceit. Sophia's influencer status took a hit when her filmed mockery of me went viral, costing her a lucrative advertising deal with a luxury brand. I didn't revel in their downfall, their choices had sown their ruin. I felt no obligation to save them, some bridges are better left burned. A quieter, more meaningful moment came when Janet, my father's sister, asked to meet me at a small cafe near Westfield Gallery. She'd always been neutral, never cruel but never an ally. Clutching her coffee, she looked at me with regret. "I owe you an apology, Fiona," she said. "I saw how Eleanor isolated you, painting you as ungrateful, and I stayed silent." She admitted her fear of confrontation had kept her complicit, but she wanted me to know my father loved me. "He kept your childhood photos in his private office, hidden from Eleanor. His guilt for not protecting you haunted him." Her words, raw and honest, gave me back a piece of my father, a fragment of the man who'd once called me his artist. It wasn't full closure, but it was a start. 6 months later, Nathan and I launched the Thomas Harper Art Therapy Foundation, dedicated to helping children process grief through creativity. The launch event, a warm gathering of supporters, I unveiled a painting I'd created at 10, a family under a sunset, vibrant and full of hope, which Eleanor had hidden away to diminish me. Standing before the crowd, I said, "This painting is for my father who believed in my heart. Art saved me when I felt invisible, and I want every child to have that lifeline." The room erupted in applause, and Nathan squeezed my hand, his pride palpable. That night, strolling along the Charles River, the city lights dancing on the water, I turned to Nathan. "I used to think I needed their approval to feel whole," I said. "Now I know I was always enough." He smiled, his eyes soft. "I fell in love with you that first day in the gallery, Fiona, when you spoke about art with such pure passion. You're your own light. Through this journey, I've learned 3 lessons I hope you'll carry with you. First, your worth isn't defined by those who reject you, your value shines from within. Second, family isn't just blood, it's the people who see and cherish you, flaws and all. Finally, healing comes from embracing your truth, not hiding it. If you're struggling with rejection, seek those who lift you up and never stop believing in yourself." If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more tales of resilience and redemption. Your support means the world, and I'd love to hear your own experiences in the comments. Have you found your chosen family or overcome a painful past? Let's inspire each other. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to shine as your true self.